record. So again, good morning, World Futures. Okay, at 7 p.m., right? I can't silence Lucien. Sorry, guys.
Good morning.
Hi, Lucien. Can you mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, now let's start. We are very cautious with Lucien, you are still not on mute. We're very
Okay.
with Zoom bombing. Can you mute yourself, Lucien?
My name is Bisney. I'm from Madagascar.
Okay, we are not doing introductions. I am waiting 1 minute until everyone is in the room so we can start.
My name is Vitissa.
Are these your student, Mohammad? No, no. Are these your students? No, no.
My name is
Hi, Lisa. It's good that you are here. Can you open your camera 1 sec? Hi, my dear. Hello. So I'm having some issues. I can't mute people.
Okay.
Me neither.
Okay. Well, I can mute. Maybe Amna didn't make you a co-host?
Yes, I am co-host and also Mohammad.
The Future, a global nonprofit dedicated to embedding futures literacy in education worldwide, in partnership with the Millennium Project and the Young Voices Network. Right now, we are all part of a 24-hour global conversation about our futures, creating a space where all generations, especially young voices, can share their visions, concerns, and action-driven projects towards a better tomorrow. This will be streamed on YouTube. Let's make this conversation count. Share your thoughts and join the global discussion using hashtag WFDYV 2025. Facilitators, take it away.
Thank you so much. We will leave a moment after the session for Q&A questions. You also have the chat. So let's start. I would like to first introduce myself for the ones that maybe don't know me. I'm Lourdes Rodriguez. I'm the co-executive director of Teach the Future with Lisa Giuliani and Rosa Alegría. And I'm really, really happy that we are celebrating the 5th World Future Day Young Voices. And every year we are growing in registrations. We are almost in 1,000 registrations. And it's really exciting. And I wanted to thank Lisa and Amna. They are going to be awake for 24 hours today to make sure that everything is taken care of. So thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, Amna. With that, I will briefly introduce why we are here, and then Mohammad, the floor will be yours. So I met Mohammad not in person, but online. I've been following the work of his school, the school where he's working, Hand in Hand School, and I was really inspired by the stories they were sharing in social media, by the emotions and hope they share. And I wanted to connect this with Teach the Future somehow, because we are always talking about the future, we are always talking about hope, but sometimes for some privileged context. So I wanted to have a conversation with someone that it's maybe having a more challenging context. So with that, Mohammed, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. First of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ramadan Mubarak for everyone. Can you hear me good in terms of the voice?
Perfect.
Thank you. I encourage everyone to open their cameras so we can see each other. I'll start with, describing a bit about myself. My name is Mohammad Kundos. Hey, Austin. Thank you for opening your camera. My name is Mohammad Kundos. Hello, everyone. Yes, yes, yes. You see the light coming out of your homes, of your faces. Thank you. So I live in Jaffa. I'm Palestinian, citizen of Israel. And I work in two major fields. I work as an educator. I'm a principal of a bilingual school that belongs to Hand in Hand NGO. Hand in Hand brings Palestinians and Israelis together to learn since kindergarten to high school. And the other field that I'm working with is art. I'm a musician, an actor, theater and film actor. And I'm working to combine these two fields together because I think they dance very nice together in the educational field. And I'm very honored to be here with you guys to share with you my story and to hear some questions and thoughts that you may have about this idea of changing the future. It's sometimes this idea may sound cliche for some of us. Some of us will see this idea as something far away. For me, changing the future is one of my main goals as a human being, as a Palestinian, as an educator, as an artist. And I'm happy to be part of this conversation. And thank you, Dres, for this invitation. I want to share with you my story through three different stops or three different destinations: music, theater, and education. And my story, my journey, started when I was very young, when I was 12, 13 in my middle school. I realized that, learning about my personal story, I learned that I have family in Jaffa. I have family that was forced to leave Jaffa in 48, so some of them in Gaza, some of them in the West Bank. And I live in Jaffa, which supposed to be a mixed city, a multicultural city, at least in title. And that driven me to search for an answer for the question, how can we end the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? For me, changing the future starts by acknowledging the past, acknowledging our history, acknowledging our stories. I learned about my history not from schools. I learned on my history from my father and my mother. When I insisted on asking them what happened in 48. And the reason I insisted, and it didn't come naturally, because my parents were afraid to tell me what really happened. Living in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you're living in this fear of knowing. And when we're talking about education, the first the first right that we as human beings have is to know. Your knowledge is power. If we don't know, we're lost. And when I insisted to my parents, they were afraid in the beginning, but then when they saw me not giving up, they started telling me the stories of my grandfather and the stories of my grandmother that were forced to leave in 48 occupation and war. And that driven me to start finding answers for this question, if I believe in peace, and if I believe in art, and if I believe that we all around the world should live in peace, so how can we do that? And then I started looking for fields that can give me an answer. And the first field that I felt so connected to is music. I play oud and hand drums, hand percussion. And for me, music was this magical language that brings people together. It's not Hebrew, it's not Arabic, it's not English, it's not French. It's a universal language that everyone can understand. And when I finished high school, I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. This is the right place for me to be a musician, to connect with other people around the world through this language, this new language that I have in my hand. And I knew with myself that if I really wanna find political answers in music, I have to, learn it professionally. That's why I did my bachelor in Boston in the US in music and in film and in theater to start, to learn it professionally so I can speak from a professional point of view. And when I started learning music, I realized some hard facts. I learned about the term harmony. Harmony is a musical term where a couple of voices can be played at the same time, and they can create this magic. But as a Palestinian, as an Arab, I brought with me my oud to the state. And lesson after lesson, I realized that my music scales, my music tones cannot be played in Western harmony. There are some quarter notes in the oud, the instrument that I play, that you cannot play in piano or guitar or any Western instrument. And I thought to myself, this is not how we can create peace. We cannot create peace only from specific voices that are agreed on in the Western world. I want my culture to enter the Western world. I don't want my culture to be left out of Western music scales. That made me think, how can we create harmony out of conflicted voices? Because the music that I can play on my oud simply cannot fit in piano, in Beethoven, and in Mozart. Because we have different sounds, different narratives, different stories. And I realized back then that, in order to create harmony out of conflicted narratives, like the Palestinian and the Israeli narratives, we cannot play everything at the same time. Sometimes we should tell stories one after another. Some voices cannot be played together. Some voices must be played separately and be heard separately and be respected separately. And this made me think that, okay, Unfortunately, music is not enough for me. And I couldn't find the real answer in music towards how we end the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian bloody conflict. We're living 2 years of horrific, cruel war right now. We're living in pain. We're living in sadness. We're living with kind of lack of hope. And for myself, I'm really, I feel that it's my duty to find this answer. How can I bring peace to my people? How can I bring peace to people in need? How can I bring this justice um, to my family in Gaza, in the West Bank, to my Jewish friends, to my friends in the US? How can we create a world where we all can really live in this peace and not, live in this cliche that, peace will never come? No, peace will come. It's our duty. It's your duty as kids, as adults, as educators, as artists, as a human being. So I took what I learned from music and I entered the theater world. And the reason I entered the theater world because I learned that in theater, conflict is the essence of good drama. Is there a question?
No,
Oh,
please continue. We will have questions at the end, Mohammed.
we'll have questions. Okay, so Teresia, uh, hold your question. We'll give it time. So as I said, I took what I learned from music and I entered the theater world, where I learned that, in the essence of good drama, there is a conflict hidden inside. For example, Romeo and Juliet. If Romeo and Juliet didn't have a conflict that stood between them and their love, they would have got married second page, and Shakespeare wouldn't be Shakespeare that we know today. You watch films. Every good film is about a conflict, a hero that has a dream, and something is stopping him from achieving his dream. We're all here sitting talking about the hope for our future, and the question that we must ask: what is stopping us from achieving this goal? So in theater, I also learned that there is beauty. There is this kind of beauty of contradicted powers. In the philosophy of opposite powers, the human nature, unfortunately, needs light in order to appreciate darkness, or need darkness to appreciate light. We as a human being, sometimes we need to get sick in order to appreciate health. You know this song by Passenger? You only see the light when you're low, something like that. It's a song that I like. But in conflict, it's it's very interesting because you learn through conflict what the things that are really important to fight for. Only when something is stopping you from achieving your dream, you realize how important is your dream. If you give up, so it's not that important. If you keep fighting, so it means that this dream is worth fighting for. So conflicts are great teachers, but the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a cruel teacher. There's no joy of in watching bloody conflict take people's life, war after war. That's why I thought to myself, I need to continue my journey. I learned a lot in music. I learned a lot in theater, but I need to continue my journey, and that's where I got to education. And in the educational field, I realized what I was missing when I was a student in my middle school and in my high school. I looked, I searched, I found my Palestinian identity only when I started playing music and started working with theater, because these artistic fields invited me to open up, to scratch in and find myself. And I thought to myself, that's what I need to bring back to the education system in Jaffa, in my hometown. And, when I started digging in the educational system, I did some research on the philosophy of education. And one of the things that I learned about the ethics and philosophy of the Educational Act, that in order for us to teach values, it's by our ability to fight for these values to every human being. For example, if we believe in justice, if we believe in freedom, if we believe in dignity, if we believe in any kind of values, I cannot choose a specific group or a specific race to give them these values. I have to fight for every human being in the world. So if I believe in justice, equity, for example, and freedom, that means a child in Gaza has the same right as a child in Tel Aviv. And we should fight equally to every kid, to every child, to every human being in the world. If they're in Palestine, if in Israel, in Pakistan, in Canada, in Spain, in Ukraine, in Russia, that's how you teach values. And I realized that now I can bring my musical background and my theatrical background into the educational system and start doing a real change, because I realized that if we want peace, we have to educate for peace. We have to educate for peace since kindergarten. And unfortunately, I looked on the educational map in my country, and it was crazy, because we live in a separated system. There is more than 5,000 schools. How many of them they're bilingual, you may ask? Only 9. 9 bilingual schools out of 5,273 schools in our country. The educational system is divided into 4 or 5 groups. And the only places that are bringing Palestinians and Israelis together, it's in hand, the NGOs that I'm working with. And I would love to elaborate a bit more about what does it look like for Palestinians and Israelis to learn together. It's when you live in a country or in a reality that based on separation, all your life you live in fear because you don't know the other side. And this fear is fed by the media that only spread hatred and extreme voices. But in education, when you bring people together, when you bring children together, they learn from kindergarten. They learn their stories, and they learn that the other that might be Jewish or Arab that might live in the same building that I live in, and they don't know me. They have different stories. When kids grow up together, learning not only the language, it's not only about learning Arabic and Hebrew, it's learning the language, it's learning the culture, the music, the theater, the shows, the religions, the holidays. It's being able to develop a human connection to the person that is growing up with you. These kids, when they learn together, it's not only kids, Jewish and Palestinian kids learning together. They also learn in a school that bring Palestinian educators and Israeli educators. So these kids, when they go to their classroom, two teachers will be waiting for them, one Palestinian, one Israeli, and they would be teaching them about stories from the Quran, from the Torah, from the Bible, from the Greek mythology, from science. For example, we 3 weeks ago we started learning the story of the creation of the world. We learn it in the Torah, in the Quran, in the Bible, in the science, and these kids, in one hand, developed sense of proud, to be proud of their own story, their religion, their story, and they're exposed to the different narratives and to the different perspectives that other people might see. We have a lot in common as human beings. Now Ramadan started today. It's in 2 weeks, Purim will start in the Jewish community. So we have a lot of holidays mixed in, and it allows our children to live together and not being afraid of one another. They can really live in peace with one another. And we learn also that we can live in peace even if we disagree. There are some facts in the world that, for example, if we're talking about 48, there's two narratives. If we're talking about the war now, it's two narratives. If we're talking about anything in the world, you might have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 narratives. So how can we create a place where I feel comfortable as Muhammad to say, as I said in the beginning of my talk, to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim without being afraid that someone will understand me incorrectly? Because that's who I am, that's my identity. And now I feel proud that I'm fasting. And I know some of you are fasting, and I know that, some of us here have different hours. Some of us just finished suhoor, and some of us might just break the fast. And some of us from different religions, they're not fasting, but it's the beauty of this world where we can all live together with a sense of appreciation, with sense of being thankful to the variety of the human kind. So in education, as I told you, I found out that this is the field that I wanna be in order to make this dream, this question, this journey that I shared with you earlier come true. It cannot be true. It cannot be possible without the education part. Education gives us hope for the future, because it's like planting a tree. You're planting this seed in this land, and you have to keep watering it and protecting it and allowing it to grow. And that's how the education system works. You get kids 3, 4 years old since kindergarten, and you help them, you water them with peace, you water them with coexistence, you water them with acceptance, you water them with values, with justice, freedom, that it belongs to all. And when you're raising these kids on these values, you will raise leaders that are not afraid to think differently, that are not afraid to work together, that are not afraid to speak out loud and say, we want peace and we will fight for peace and not giving up. So these 3 stations that I shared with you are my story, are my personal story. And I would love to have questions, to have conversation, thoughts that you may have. It would be my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mohammad, for sharing your story, your inspiring story. I have a really pressing question, in the sense, like, I think all in this meeting agree with you. believe in your words. How can we do it in a practical sense? Can you tell us stories from the classroom, from the youth? I'm coming from a psychology. My background is in psychology, so I know
Mhm.
how, as humans, we are emotional. So when something hurt us, the emotion is what's taking control. So
Yes.
how can you give us a practical example for youth and for adults in this emotional moment?
Um, thank you for this question. I will again divide it into three steps. Uh, education, education, education. The first part, the first part is educating for acknowledgement. When you educate for acknowledgement, you educate people to acknowledge each other pain, each other's traumas, each other's stories, each other's narrative. The second step is educating for correcting, to make things right. You know, if something is wrong, you make it right. You know, you should be active in, for example, stopping the occupation. You should be active in creating peace. You should be active in creating dialogue between people, not to sit and you know just wait for other people to do it. You should be part of correcting or of making things right. And making things right is by talking to people, convincing people that we want these values. For example, we want peace, and peace would not come if we're not equal, if we don't have equality, if we don't have justice for all. And the third step in education is educating to dream, to educate people not to stop dreaming about a better future, not to stop imagining a better future. Because only when we can imagine the future that we want to live in, we can make it happen. You know, as Gandhi said, you know, be the change that you want to see in the future. I feel every day in my school that I'm being with the kids and the staff, I'm being the change that I want to see in the future, that all of us want to see in the future. So educating for acknowledgement, educating for correcting things, being active, and educating for dreaming, not stop dreaming.
Wow, thank you so much. Is there an activity or a facilitation tip or a game that you can share for teachers that are maybe here in this and want to, like, for example, you gave the example of the stories of the creation of the world. I think
Yes.
this is great, but imagine that a kid said, "But this is not right. My parents told me that this is a lie." What would you do in this? How do you facilitate this conversation?
Which is okay. Having an honest conversation is part of is the educational method. You know, when the kid uh, learned, let's take the creation of the world for an example. If the kid learned the story in the Quran and learn the story in the Torah, and learn the story in the Bible, and learn it in science, and learn it in the Greek mythology. So you give them variety of narratives, which one of them they feel belong to. This is my truth, and they have the right to feel ownership on their story and be proud of their story. But along the way with having the right to be proud of your story, you should respect other people's perspective. So how can we create, even if you think the other person is living in a lie, why you think that? Convince me. Is your story affected or being threatened by other stories? What happened to us, even in this circle, in this Zoom now? You know, unfortunately I don't know everyone, and I would love to know everyone. But even in this Zoom meeting, you know, we might have different perspectives on one thing. if it's the creation of the world or the history of the Islam or the history of the Jewish people or the history of science. The key is to create a safe environment for kids to have a complicated conversation without the need to go to extreme violence. The moment we teach how to talk, how to discuss, is the baseline for any future together. Because we can disagree, in science. Ibn Rushd, which is one of the Islamic scientists that lived in Andalusia, brought the term of proof. And in science today, anything that doesn't have proof is not science. So we educate our kids, if you believe in something, try to prove it. Try to convince me. Believe in what you believe out of research. In the educational methods, we talk about the PBL, project-based learning. And in project-based learning, we teach kids, we teach ourselves that we have the right to ask questions, and we have the responsibility to research the questions that we ask, but we also have responsibility to present the results. I can have questions about anything, about sports, about music, about food. Maybe I'm saying food because I'm fasting and I'm hungry, but anyway, when kids practice asking questions and researching these questions and presenting their results on these questions, they practice having a complicated conversation. And when all the kids in the classroom start sharing different results on similar questions, you would start to have some magical conversations about life, about different interests that they have. So my suggestion or my request, not to be afraid of hard conversations, not to be afraid of hard questions, not to be afraid of disagreements. Let's prove that we can disagree and still respect each other. On some points in life, we might even not agree on anything, but we still respect each other. Me and my wife, we don't agree on everything, but we still live together in peace, in respect. She's listening to me right now, so I'm trying to be polite as possible. But yeah, in general, in life, we have a lot of things that we disagree on. So our commitment to our human side is to create this safe environment where we can live in peace, although we disagree sometimes. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mohammad, for sharing these tips. I think it's time to open the floor for questions, and I see Mitiricha. Would you like to start with your question? Also, Mohammad, you have some comments in the chat. I don't know if from the mobile phone you can.
I don't see the chat, sorry. So if we can collect.
Yeah, I asked them to open the.
Okay.
So, Lisa, can we unmute Metricha?
Yes, let me check.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Trisha.
Hello. Yes. How in light of the circumstance, how did your life in study in your hobby in Palestine? Actually, the Algeria is brothers, my country, Palestine, in Dubai.
Yes.
Thank you.
So your question is how you practice hobbies in a moment of crisis? Is that right?
Yeah, custom Stanson. Yes, in the Palestine. Sorry.
Thank you for your question, Teresa. It's very, in the beginning of the war, I wasn't able to play out, for example. When you're in pain, you should give pain some space and some time. And that's something that I learned in the last 2 years. Sometimes where, you cannot uh, you cannot survive if you don't allow yourself to be in pain, to breathe this pain, to breathe this sometimes lack of hope. You need to allow yourself to be there and learn about yourself in this place. I have a family in Gaza that was murdered. I gave myself time to grieve. I'm still grieving, to mourn. And only when I gave myself time and space to live in my own pain, in my nation's pain, I was able to start playing again. I was able to start writing again. After 1 year of this war, I started writing again in theater. I was able to bring all of my emotions that I felt into artistic languages.
Thank you.
And the thing about art, if it's not real, if it's not honest, it cannot create bridges with other people. It has to be from inside. It has to be real.